keeping their population ignorant or uninformed, because that will doom that society to marginalized contribution to the greater world.
Pardon me. Yeah, we were just talking about that. The idea that in a culture, in an environment, if you get to a point where everybody knows everything, where there's an openness, hopefully you can get more productivity out of it. And like you said, you're calm enough and relaxed enough to take a nap on the couch. You're not gonna, there's no big brother watching there.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's. I think the interesting thing about social networking, touching on some other things we've chatted about, is your society is your friends, possibly your high school buddies or your college group, friends of various form, your family, typically your coworkers, maybe your neighbors. For most people, that's kind of it. And what the net, if you will, provides is the ability to easily create associations across space and time. And now you have new communities that form around whatever it might be. And I think that's the ultimate phenomenon here that's driving social networking. Mm-hmm. But I think it has a great deal more power than that. It can ultimately reorganize essentially person kind. Yeah. It's not clear to me that governments add all that much value. If we could ever get over some of the silliness that we've inherited over the past 10,000 years of civilization. And I think that this is going to come from, by the way, it will come from ubiquitous availability of accurate information. Mm-hmm. So that's the game.
Yeah, there's a paleontologist that studied nomadic tribes over thousands of years, and Teilhard de Chardin, he noticed that there were people coming up with the same invention at the same time, and there was no way logistically they could have possibly shared that information.
Right.
There's unconscious sharing of information, and hopefully these networks and the internet is going to enable the conscious sharing of information.
Right. And on certain things, like medical issues, it can be of extraordinary importance to all of civilization that we have this flat, open communication.
Online medical records, which Google's working on with Google Health.
Certainly.
And other companies, even a local company here in town.
It's probably the most overdue thing in the whole technological space is the getting medical records available to you, much less, I think about this way. I could care less if the insurance companies know what's in my medical records. They already know. What privacy am I protecting?
Yes.
If I'm in an accident somewhere in some place in a taxi and I get in an emergency room and they figure out who I am, I want that doctor to know everything.
Yeah, and a few years ago, HIPAA saw to that by changing the law that every individual owns their own medical record.
Right, but it doesn't do you any good to own manila folders off in storage containers somewhere for doctors that you have long forgotten their name.
Yeah, I could not agree with you more. In fact, that's one of the bets I'm placing.
Right.
Currently.
Okay.
There's a question over here.
Questions?
Yes, sir.
You may have covered this. You've been talking about it since I stood up now. But what do you see as the greatest opportunity for the future, really?
The greatest opportunity for the future. It's not technology in the Google sense. If I was starting my career over again, I'd probably still do astronomy, but I would go into some variant of either the energy sector, the green energy sector, or essentially microbiology, biology, computational biology, medicine. That the interface between chemistry, physics, biology is extraordinarily complicated. But with the computers that are now beginning to be able to be built, you can start to make it tractable.
Yeah.
I mean, it's rumored that Google has 1 billion computers. You can kind of do a back of the envelope calculation to say that rumor's plausible.
Yeah.
Okay. But if there were 100 million or maybe 1 billion computers all organized together, we could start to get a handle on bioengineering problems at the scale they need to be dealt with. And this is the real revolution of the next century, in my opinion.
Definitely. I mean, I see that too in the convergence of mobile devices with the physical world.
Right.
And you know, taking the medical record concept to the next level. Imagine if your watch was scanning your your iodine level or your platelets in your blood or whatever else, and was actually sending the signal to your doctor. The doctor calls you and tells you, you need to sit down.
Yeah. I wouldn't listen, but then. No, but that's exactly right. Yeah.
So you've mentioned a couple times the term bet when you were talking about betting on people or betting on projects. I was wondering if you make proposition bets, and if so, what was the most interesting one?
Proposition bets, meaning I bet X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
I've learned not to bet. Because when you lose, it can be very painful. Let's see. I don't think I do that very often.
Was there ever a time at Google with these this 800 plus engineers, 1,500 in its final days, that when you were there, where you actually said, let's create something brand new? I think it's going to be this. I think this is the trend I see.
That would almost guarantee a failure. Yeah. I told you that my artistic taste was in my big toe, or part of my big toe. That's probably an accurate statement, but my ability to actually bet on what ideas end up working or not is actually pretty.
Do you think that's a requirement?
It's random.
Yeah. So is that maybe the? There's a lot of questions that I got, again, off the social networks and everything about, challenging that you're actually an entrepreneur, because you sort of have self-declared yourself as not an entrepreneur. But is this maybe this is the missing element in you that you need to have to be an entrepreneur, that you have to be willing to take that bet?
No. The reason that entrepreneuring it doesn't directly interest me, although I've thought about it a number of times, is I've really been interested at operating at a different scale.
And having those resources.
Having the resources. Yeah. The bets have been, you can stack the deck for you by sort of understanding what's going on, understanding the physics, getting the right people in place, and then flying air cover, keep the naysayers away, and that's that's how we tended to do it. It's kind of.
We're gonna go over here.
Yeah, sure.
Hey, you've talked about taking the information and making it universally acceptable or accessible. That the second part of the Google mission statement concerns me a little bit, especially when you start talking about things like medical records and information that is very personal and not meant to be shared universally. I know there have been recently subpoenaed information has come out of Google, and there's anecdotal cases where people have been denied things because of information that has been searched in Google. About a year and a half ago, an old client of mine had one of your Google network appliances and was able to search for the CEO's salary just by plugging in an Ethernet cable. And sometimes this information can be dangerous and damaging. And from an engineering perspective, is that something that you guys have looked at long term? Is it something that Google is focusing on now?
Well, the high concept mission is to take all the world's information. The high concept is not to take your personal information